We can mourn it, we celebrate it, but then eventually we have to let it die. And in chapter 10 of the book, I unpack really my reluctance to do that for about a decade. Reluctance to really surrender it and trust like, hey, God actually has a better plan than you can keep trying to freaking manufacture, Daron, with all of your brilliant ideas that you think you have. Like, let it die. And my hope as you listen to this podcast, my hope as you read the book is that I can save you about a decade of frustration, a decade of hurt relationships, a decade of delaying the ability for you to step into the fullness of who God's created you to be. Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Daron Earlewine Podcast. We are going chapter by chapter through my book, The Death of a Dream, and I'm really enjoying these sessions. I'm really enjoying these episodes. I think I told you guys before is that, when we put the book together, there was so much stuff that I wanted to put in every chapter. And working with Emily Sutherland that you guys, hopefully you're able to watch the 2 episodes that we recorded with Emily as we worked as a team in this project. She's been a part of tons of book projects, and she'd be like, Daron, we can't, every chapter can't be, 15 pages. We got to keep people turning. And I'm like, but listen, they need to know this principle from the word. Like, they got to know this. And so much of the stuff that I wanted to be in the book didn't make it in the book. And that's why I'm so excited that we're able to do this podcast series to hopefully get everything that I wasn't able to say in the book and some of the more, I know deeper spiritual kind of discipleship walk through the process material. And really excited to let you know as a podcast audience is we're going to compile all these episodes and put together a small group discussion curriculum. So if you're going through this and you're reading the book by yourself, you're going chapter by chapter, I want you thinking, I want you praying about who could be a small group of people that could really benefit from this journey. And as soon as we can get it all edited and all put together, we're going to be releasing the small group curriculum where you can get together, have like a little book club. You'll be able to go through each chapter, go through these sessions, and then there's going to be discussion questions that you can have as a group at the end of each session. So I can't wait to get that resource coming your guys' way, and I hope it really blesses you and leads to the resurrection of a lot of purpose in your life and in your circle of influence. So we're hitting chapter 10 today, which is called Let It Die. And not Live and Let Die, which we probably could use that, except we would have to get copyright from who's Bob Dylan? Who wrote that song, Live and Let Die? Paul McCartney. Then, made even more famous by Guns N' Roses, but this is not rock and roll history. This is about your dream and mine. Anyway, Let It Die. This was a tough one. I was just talking to producer Darren Cooper in between sessions here. It's like the first half of the book, it's like a little lighter, we're going through the different things and creating the dream and blah, blah, blah. Man, these middle chapters start getting into the nitty gritty of the process that we have to go through when a dream dies. But hey, like we said in the past episode, right? The only way you can't go around it. The only way is through it. So we're going to jump in. Here's the deal. When we experience the death of a dream, eventually we have to let it die. We can mourn it, we celebrate it, but then eventually we have to let it die. And in chapter 10 of the book, I unpack really my reluctance to do that for about a decade. Reluctance to really surrender it and trust like, hey, God actually has a better plan than you can keep trying to freaking manufacture, Daron, with all of your brilliant ideas that you think you have. Like, let it die. And my hope as you listen to this podcast, my hope as you read the book is that I can save you about a decade of frustration, a decade of hurt relationships, a decade of delaying the ability for you to step into the fullness of who God's created you to be if you don't let it die. And the scriptures that I use for us to unpack this, right? It's a story of Mary and Martha and Lazarus. And it's a great story. It starts like this, right? A man was sick, Lazarus of Bethany, the town of Mary and her sister Martha. This was the same Mary who massaged the Lord's feet with aromatic oils and then wiped him with her feet. I think it's pretty funny here that the author is giving us some context. Like this is kind of loaded with stuff we should be, at least for me, I think we should be reading between the lines. He's saying like, hey, like this is not just some Mary and some Martha down with like these are some of Jesus's inner people. Like these are his people. And then it goes on and says this, right? It was her brother Lazarus who was sick. So the sister sent word to Jesus saying, Master, the one you love so very much is sick. And when I've read this, what I hear from this is those things where like we feel like we've got to kind of remind Jesus how important we are, or the person that we're praying for, or the dream is. Now, Jesus, listen, this is Lazarus. He's the one you love so very much, right? So what's the presupposition? Presupposition, in my opinion, in this is you don't let bad things happen to the people that you love very much. And I think don't we all? I mean, I know that that's an assumption that I still struggle with now, and I think maybe we all do. Is like it's difficult for us to get our mind around. Okay, wait a second, God, you say you love me so much, and I'm in a covenant relationship, and all these things, but it's like I, as a sinful, you know what I mean, like not God person here, like if I had the power to not allow bad things to happen to people I love, I wouldn't allow them to happen. Like I'd be the magic eraser of all negative things that could ever possibly happen to people that I love. And then God doesn't do that. And it attacks our assumption that he actually loves us. If you love me, what the heck? Life's not fair. Like all that. Let's take the past 2 chapters of Daron's book and set them on fire if God loves me, because what the heck is happening in my life? So they send this message to Jesus, which basically get prayer, except he's on earth. So you have to pray. They just send a message, right? Hey, Jesus, Lazarus, the one you really, really love, he's sick. So if you could come really just start doing some Jesus stuff over here, be really cool. And, listen, everybody's going to they know he's sick. It'll be a big PR move for you to Jesus come in and heal him. And so I'm sure that's probably what you want to do. I mean, if I'm leaning on my own understanding here, you should come. You should do some Jesus stuff, and we'll move on with a healed Lazarus. Thank you very much. Amen. Then we get to verse 5. Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. Right there. Good start. She's right? It's saying, hey, Jesus, the one that you love, he's very sick. Then it starts off, Jesus loved Mary and Martha, right? Or Martha and her sister and Lazarus. He really did. Absolutely true. He loved them a ton, comma. But oddly, when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was for 2 more days, comma. But oddly, my guess is in your death of a dream story, you have a comma, but oddly. For me, right? Sacrifice everything I know, leave the family and friends from Arizona to come to a flat, frozen tundra called Indiana, dealing with the conservative nature of the Midwest. All of this, I cut my hair off. I take out my earrings. At one point, I'm getting khakis and sweaters here, okay? I'm becoming an Abercrombie and Fitch model, right? Traveling for this school. Like, I'm sacrificing everything I know to sacrifice to the point where, I've got no job, barely any food in the fridge, just trying to make this whole dream happen. Why? Because I love Jesus. I think he loves me. We want to travel around the world, tell people about Jesus. Why wouldn't Jesus want us to do that? 3 months away from graduating, everything's going great. The dream is right here. I can taste it. I can see it. It's gonna happen. You follow Jesus. Everything is perfect. It's great. Period. Let's go. Comma. But oddly, one of my best friends betrays me. Everything blows up. Life's not fair. What is happening? I wish we weren't disconnected from technology here, and you and I could sit down. We could have a nice cup of coffee, and you could tell me your story. Your comma, but oddly story that God says he loves me, but oddly he did not show up. It didn't work out, and my dream died. When we come face to face with these but oddly moments, they attack our presuppositions about God's goodness, his character, his love, his protection. And this is where faith has to come in. Faith and trust in who he says he is, his faithfulness in the past, and that he's with us in these moments, and that he has our best interest at heart. So when we get to these moments, here's what we have to do. But oddly, it didn't work out. Jesus didn't show up the way I thought he was going to show up. my dream is dead. So I have to mourn, right? That can take a season. I need to celebrate it. And I'm doing this with him, right? We talked about it in the last episode, right? That life's not fair and God's with you. So you mourn it with God, right? You celebrate it with him, but then you have to let it die. And I'm thinking about this situation with Mary and Martha. I mean, can you imagine if they would have refused to let Lazarus die? Like, just think about it. Because we go on to the story, and Jesus shows up, but when Jesus shows up, Lazarus has been dead for 4 days. So he's dead for 4 days. Imagine if Jesus shows up and 4 days dead Lazarus is like propped up on like they got him at the kitchen table, you know what I mean? And he's like crazy stiff still and like starting to decompose and no one can eat, right? They can't eat at their kitchen table because here's dead Lazarus at the table. It's starting to stink up the house. The whole neighborhood knows like, hey guys, listen, they got Lazarus and he's dead. He's at the kitchen table. This is ridiculous. Like, what are they doing, right? They won't let him die. And if 4 days would have been awkward, but what if they would have been like, listen, this is not the way it's going to work. I refuse to believe this is what it's going to be. 4 months, they got dead Lazarus sitting at the kitchen table. Let's push it out a little further, right? Because it wouldn't be any more miraculous for Jesus to bring Lazarus back to life from 4 days or 4 years. He still could have done it. But imagine if for 4 years, Mary and Martha have Lazarus dead sitting at the kitchen table. Their life would completely cease to exist. Do they have any friends anymore? No. Like, relationships are blown. Why? Because there's a rotting corpse in their house at the kitchen table. They're probably getting sick from I'm not a doctor. Whatever happens if you have a decomposing body for 4 years in your home, I'm going to go, somehow you get sick from something. So relationships are gone. Their health is gone. Like, their life implodes. Why? Because they won't let him die. And obviously, you and I don't have a dead relative propped up at the kitchen table. But your dead, decomposing dream may still be ruining your health, your friendships, your life. You got to let it die. From the book, page 77. When we experience loss, pain, or trauma that results in the death of a dream, it's easy to get stuck, to live in it, and even to become identified with it. In order to become the person we were born to be, it's important to separate the things that happen to us from our being. I had to learn that I am not my circumstances. We are not our pain, loss, or former dreams. For me, learning to rediscover myself required a different understanding of myself and God. Just as I cannot go back in time, God isn't stuck in the past where things went wrong. Sure, we can see his faithfulness by looking back, but his presence is experienced right here and now. And when we learn to just be and allow his presence to just be with us in this moment, we can better understand his passion for creating a future that is built moment by moment. We got to let it die. You know, the good thing that I find even more comfort from this story is that when Jesus shows up to do what Jesus is going to do, which Jesus had planned, right? We got to remember, when this but oddly moment happened, it didn't surprise Jesus. It wasn't like he got busy and just forgot and was like, oh, crap, I let Lazarus die. What are we going to do? I got to figure this one out. He wasn't surprised. He knew what he was doing from the get-go, and he knows what he's doing in your life too. He knew what he was doing in my life, even when I but oddly couldn't figure it out. But when he shows up for Mary and Martha, the thing I love about it is he doesn't show up and go like, what is the deal? Why are you guys all crying, right? Don't you know that I'm Jesus? And he says it, right? I'm the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me, right? Even like, listen, today I am it. I got it. I can take. What's the mourning? What's the sorrow here, right? You guys' faith is garbage. You know, I don't know where these emotions are coming from. Like, I don't know why I deal with you guys. I mean, I said I loved you, but it's just, if it's going to be just a big sob fest over this guy dying, I can't bring this guy back to life, right? We don't get that from Jesus. What I love about this is that Jesus empathizes with our pain, our sorrow, and our mourning, and he mourns with us. When Jesus gets there, right, he does tell them, hey, listen, like I'm the resurrection and the life. I can take care of this. But then when he sees how broken that Mary and Martha and their family is, it says, then Jesus wept. Think about that for a minute. I want it to bring you some comfort, I hope. Is Jesus knows what he has planned for your future. You are the workmanship of God, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, a purpose, right, set forth for you, right, that had been set in advance for you to walk into. Jesus knows where he's taking you. He knew what he was going to do with Lazarus, but when you are mourning, he weeps with you. Man, that's huge. He doesn't condemn you. He doesn't say, hey, listen, suck it up. Come on, man. When you mourn, he mourns. What a good God. What a great Father. The great news is that in this story and in my story and in your story, Jesus doesn't just sit there for the next, 5 days crying and with Mary and Martha. He weeps, but then he resurrects. Then he goes to work to resurrect. Jesus says to them in John 11, verse 25 and 26, you don't have to wait for the end. I am right now resurrection and life. The one who believes in me, even though he or she dies, will live. And everyone who lives believing in me does not ultimately die at all. Do you believe this? Jesus has the power to resurrect your purpose. From the book, death never is actually the end of the story with Jesus. Even when we don't get it, if we're willing to trust Jesus with our dreams, we will eventually experience the joy of resurrection. Dreams have a life cycle. They have a birth, a life, and a death. But here's the best part. Dreams also have a resurrection. They may take on a different appearance. Not even Jesus' closest friends recognized him after his resurrection. When you let your dream die and leave it in Jesus' hands, you may not recognize it when it first rises from the mist, but the real miracles only happen when you stop trying to figure it all out and let it go. That is when God can take the abilities, talents, and determination that he has knit into your DNA and accomplish things through you that you never thought possible. He cares immeasurably more about who you're becoming than he does about what you're accomplishing. God's greatest dream for your life is to see you become all that he created you to be. That dream has everything to do with your character and very little to do with your career. So if you're staring at the corpse of a dream, take it from me. Don't prolong its agony. It's time for a funeral. Mourn the loss, refocus your life on your true identity, and allow yourself to prepare for a resurrection when you will finally realize the dream was always about your transformation. Save yourself more heartache and let that dream die so you can experience the resurrection of the purpose you were created to fulfill. Wow. It's painful. It's difficult, but it's worth it. And hopefully some of the steps that we're walking through together can be the things that help you take those steps. I love the way the story ends. Jesus comes and he calls Lazarus out of the tomb. And then he says, you know what? They remove the stone. Jesus calls him out and he says, listen, unwrap him and let him loose. And I think that's what Jesus is at work doing in your life. Is he's removing the stones. He's at work in ways that only he can be at work. And eventually he's gonna call your purpose. He's gonna resurrect it. And he's gonna say, listen, unwrap them, let them loose to go become who I created them to be. Last thing on this one, and then we'll be done, is most of the time these let it die moments are about surrender. I tell a little bit of the story in the chapter in the book about a concert I was at where just kind of got wrapped up in the music and sensed God say, hey, actually it was almost kind of like another, like, do you want to leave two moments. And really what God was inviting me into is to surrender my plan again. Saying, hey, can you trust me? Can you let it die? I mean, I can close my eyes right now and I can be in that parking lot, hands are raised, I'm crying and just saying, you know what, God, your will be done. Like I surrender. I surrender to your will. And if you've never done that, I want you to do it today. Don't prolong the agony of it. Let it die. Surrender it today to his will, to his plan, to his timing. Surrender it. Now, I will also tell you this. Say it in the book, right? One of the difficult things about being a living sacrifice, that's what Romans tells us to be, right? To be living sacrifices. Problem with us living sacrifices is we crawl off the altar of surrender all the time. And I did it for at least a decade. Yeah, God, your will be done. I surrender. But my will still sounds fun, and I will pick that back up in a week or two, a month or two, a year or two. And even though you will probably crawl off the altar a few more times, you got to come back and surrender every time you realize you've picked back up that dead dream. Surrender it. Trust him with the process. Your resurrection's coming. He has a purpose for your life, but you got to let this dream die. Appreciate you downloading this episode. Would love to hear from you. If I can help you take some of the next step, please reach out to me. You can email me, Daron@blackbirdmission.com. You can text me, 317-550-5070, or hit me up on socials. I believe in you and your ability to let it die. See you guys next time. Until that point, remember, God's for you. He's not against you. He's near you. He's not far away. And he's created you on purpose and for a purpose. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Daron Earlewine Podcast.